Chapter 30, Miranda. I finished chapter 30. It was painful to write. I cried when I finished it. I felt Miranda's loneliness and hurt. I have watched many women melt down like that under the influence of alcohol. I could never comfort them. It was a long time before I could figure out why. I didn't want to be the husband that caused the meltdown, but I caused them too. We get too preoccupied with what looks right to the community around us as we live our lives. We ignore what is important trying to keep up appearances, even to the detriment of our children. Then we wonder, when we end up alone and forlorn, what happened. This chapter is the heart and soul of this book. It explores the identity of the suburban housewife as her husband chases the bacon to bring home and overcompensates with material stuff instead of physical contact and words of reassurance and support. As I conceived the chapter, one thought about the whole phenomena and wept. I wept about the loss felt by all the couples who bought in on the American middle class dream of a big house in the suburbs. No amount of money or possessions can replace 1 minute of loving togetherness. I know it because I'd have sinned. I too weep for the consequences of my actions and the destruction of relationship they caused. I alluded to this in the funeral scene in the first novel as words that no wife should ever say to her husband. Unfortunately, those words sometimes need to be said. The pain that causes them needs to be released to heal. A strong, committed couple will take those words and strengthen their relationship if time allows it. Sometimes life is cut short before the relationship heals. Then the remaining part of the couple will continue grieving at every reminder of it. I chose Ben's return from the stockholders meeting to do just that. I had to have witnesses, so I placed Lou and Charlene to see Ben melt down into a pool of tears. I cried too. I get overcome. Church 30, Miranda. The 20th anniversary party was a fiasco from the beginning. Neither daughter showed up. Neither daughter answered the invitation at all. There were no cards from either daughter acknowledging the event. There were 65 people invited. Miranda and a local caterer had prepared for 75 people. Over 100 showed up. All of them friends and acquaintances of Miranda. The stress of the big event started affecting her about a week out. Miranda dealt with the stress by fortifying her iron resolve as usual with alcohol. Her medicine of choice, dark rum. Her husband, as usual, was out of town doing God knows what for the corporation. She really didn't give a rat's ass what he did at work. She wanted him with her. For 25 years, she had an absentee husband. He traveled through the big house, leaving very few traces. There was a razor on the vanity, several suits and shirts and stuff in the closet, underwear in the dresser, but very little evidence that she even had a husband. Her drinking was disguised as an innocent glass of Coke on the counter, always just under half full. There was a 2-liter bottle of it in the refrigerator. It was 1/3 rum. The giant Cuba Libre had been a fixture in the refrigerator since Ted had started school. She forbade her children from drinking any carbonated beverages. The big Coke in the refrigerator was for guests and the occasional tradesmen that came by to fix stuff. There were few guests and fewer tradesmen, but the children believed the lie anyway because they were afraid to question anything she said as her wrath was terrible. The children towed the line or else. Her little secret vice was safe. She was a functional drunk. She did what she was supposed to and much more to compensate for her empty life. She had given up television as it mocked her very existence with its constant barrage of marital bliss. All it did while she watched it was expose her broken American dream of a husband and children in a big happy house. The big house was far from happy. It was a mausoleum on a cul-de-sac in the middle of nowhere. It was a maintenance headache. Her only creative outlet there was the yard. She hated the house, but didn't want to mention it to her husband as she was afraid he would resent her disrespect of his hard work and sacrifice that bought it and not come back at all. She was lonely. Most of the time, she was also bored. She buried herself in church work, gardening, and Cuba Libres. Her children kept a respectful distance, as any appearance of rebellion was dealt with harshly with any object at hand. She never struck exposed skin after the school nurse called about some bruises on the oldest daughter's legs. To the outside world, her children were perfect. They were the envy of every parent in the church. She worked very hard to maintain the image of control and a functional alcohol level outside of the house. Occasionally, she would slip and melt down, but it was usually when she was alone. She knew her life was irretrievably broken, but she had no one to confide in to help her fix it. Outwardly, she had a perfect life to match her perfect figure, maintained by many forgotten meals and heavy yard work. Reverend Henry saw the edges of the loneliness and did what he could to alleviate the pain. He had seen it before in his congregation. Intelligent women forced into the role of housewife instead of using their hard won college degrees to better the lot of the world, acting out their empty lives in negative ways. He could count at least 60 active alcoholics, 25 drug addicts, and several women that acted out by gossiping to hide sexual misconduct. He was trained in seminary to see it and deal with it as a pastor. In the meantime, he could see his own marriage falling apart at the seams from the same neglect that brought the women of his congregation to him for help. Miranda was special to him. She was the smartest one of the group. She was a Radcliffe graduate with a degree in botany with a minor in economics. She had graduated with honors, then ran away with a sailor and got married to escape a hellish environment at home. She was always perfectly dressed with perfect hair and makeup. Her children were models of perfect behavior. He had only seen her husband a couple of times and wasn't sure if he could even pick him out in a police lineup. At first, he thought the husband was a fabrication to cover up illegitimate children. Lots of women wore wedding rings without the requisite husbands to go with them. At first, he suspected that with Miranda. Then he saw the house and knew she couldn't have a house like that without either a husband or a very wealthy sugar daddy. She did talk about her husband, and the stories seemed convincing. There were the phone calls when she was doing things in the church office. There were the postcards from exotic places that she brought in to show off. There was the exotic wardrobe that went with the postcards. Outwardly, it was the perfect suburban life. She had the big house, the perfect children, and a seemingly endless supply of money. Yet he sensed just a little despair and desperation. There was an occasional unsteadiness in her walk and a clinginess in manner. He couldn't minister to his congregation without her. She filled in the gaps in administrative duties around the church. Sure, she occasionally drove up on the curb when parking and occasionally backed into things when leaving the parking lot. She was a smallish woman driving a Cadillac. He expected things like that. The first 5 years of the marriage were idyllic. He was pursuing an electrical engineering degree at MIT. Between her job as a salesperson at an insurance agency and the GI Bill, they lived fairly well. He obviously loved her. They had children within a few years. By the time he graduated, they had three. He spoiled them rotten. When she came home from work, all tired out, they were disobedient and disrespectful, as small children are when supervised in a hit or miss manner by a busy father. She saw her own childhood repeated in them if she didn't take action. The children feared her and soon were obedient to her wants and needs. As a successful mother, she needed perfect children. When her husband graduated and went to work, she left her job and became a full-time housewife. Three preschoolers and a row house in Boston was her lot in life until NASA needed a relay that would work in a pure oxygen environment to switch large currents in space for the arm on the space shuttle. It had to be light and hot swappable in space with minimal tooling. Her husband designed such a thing on her kitchen table. He got a bonus and a transfer to Huntsville, Alabama. The job wasn't in Huntsville, though, just the office he worked from. Otherwise, he traveled to sell and adapt the relay to other applications, all expenses paid, worldwide. Anywhere there were flammable gases, there was an application for the relay. It found its way into oil refineries and gas plants, as well as flour mills and coal mines. He went to the site, checked out the specifications, and designed relays for it. He trained people to install and change them and drew a commission. She learned very quickly that money was no substitute for physical presence and love. The only plus was her husband was too tired at the end of a tour to wake up screaming from his experiences in Southeast Asia. He slept soundly and was affectionate in the morning. When they first got married and started to live together, he would go for days and days without a good night's sleep from the night terrors. She didn't get much sleep either. She started anesthetizing herself with rum. It helped her sleep through his night terrors. It also helped her deal with the trauma of being raised by a domineering and combative alcoholic mother and an absent father. Her grandmother saw what was going on in the house and rescued her, but the damage was done. At Radcliffe, she discovered rum. Rum quelled the voices in her head that told her she was no good. Rum soothed the angst from not quite measuring up to the standards of irrational people. Rum was the warmth that her mother never gave her. Rum was her salvation and her downfall. Her grandmother paid her way through college. She strove hard to make it work. She graduated with honors. It almost killed her. To handle the workload and the lab work, she added dexedrine diet pills to her self-medication regimen. She stopped menstruating. With the dexedrine, the voices came back, so she drank more rum to make them go away. She buried herself in her work. She spent the summer in the psych ward. She weighed 82 pounds when she was admitted. The next fall, the dexedrine was gone from the regimen and replaced with cocaine. Her grades stayed good. She checked into detox the next summer. She was a level 5 addict. She had burned through over $20,000. She was on the dean's list again, but had no friends and hadn't ever been on a date. The senior year, she did rum, coffee, cigarettes, and amyl nitrate. She met a sailor, fresh from the Mekong Delta. She graduated, but never returned home. Even with the sailor, who obviously adored her, her life felt empty. She medicated the emptiness with rum. Corinne was 2 and Deidre was 4 months old when she had her first blackout. She tried to drown Deidre. Corinne ran for help to a neighbor. Deidre was hospitalized and was on oxygen for a month. Her husband never knew about it as he was working and going to school full-time. MIT is a tough school. Corinne never trusted her mother after that. Neither did Deidre. Miranda demanded that her children be perfect in every way. Her idea of perfection and perfection in children are two vastly different things. Corinne and Deidre reacted to the gulf in different ways. Corinne rebelled. Corinne got punished for it. Deidre acquiesced. The near-death experience taught her that she had to toe the line no matter what. Eventually, the two girls presented to the world as perfect children. They held deep resentment and bitterness from then on. Ted was raised from babyhood in Huntsville. It was a different world than the row house in Boston. He had two experienced mentors to teach him how to keep on the straight and narrow. His main desire was to please those around him. It also helped that most of the time, he was the only male in the house. Even as a small child, it made a difference. If any child disturbed the equilibrium, they all suffered. Corinne and Deidre worked hard to keep Ted out of trouble. Deidre took the lumps for all of them. Corinne was rebellious and oppositional, especially if she thought that their mother was wrong. They all worked hard at keeping up appearances. They looked like the perfect happy family. For all intents and purposes, Miranda was a single mother. She saw her husband 1 weekend out of 6. He was usually suffering from jet lag, but he brought back exotic gifts from all over the world. He slept most of the time, but didn't have night terrors very often anymore. It was wonderful having him sleeping beside her, quietly snoring sometimes. She soaked up his smell and his warmth like a drought survivor. She didn't need rum. She had him. He spoiled the kids. They were loud and rambunctious, and he loved every minute of it. Miranda knew that they would be wild for a couple of days after he left and dreaded it. When they were wild, they weren't being perfect children. Then he would be gone again. As the kids reached school age, Miranda had doubts about the Huntsville schools. She had a picture in the back of her mind about the South. Schools were a great part of it. Perfect children went to perfect schools. She needed more culture than she thought Huntsville could provide. She stumbled upon a magazine article about Sterling Forks, Tennessee, which was billed as the college town of the future. Diversity and culture were the buzzwords. She had never heard of Sterling College, but that didn't matter. It was a college town within an easy commute to Huntsville, and it was in a dry county. The temptation for liquor wouldn't be there. She was becoming frightened by her dependence on rum to function and worried about her health. The college billed itself as a New England college in the South. The Sterlings had come from Boston, and the plantation buildings reflected their tastes. So did the town, centered on a white congregational church, just like a New England postcard. They bought the biggest lot on the new subdivision south of town. They built a grand house. They had New England money at South Central Tennessee prices. Money was no object. They had lots of it. It had 6 regular bedrooms with attached baths, a master bedroom with a room-sized closet, and a matching guest room with a similar closet. There was a huge ultra-modern kitchen with all the modern conveniences. A good crew could run a 4-star hotel restaurant from it. It had a large formal parlor, a matching dining room, a family room, and a library. It had an attached 3-car garage leading into a walk-in basement that housed a laundry, a general purpose room, and a large mudroom. It also had a wine cellar. It had a sunroom on the south side attached to the kitchen. It had a state-of-the-art climate control system that controlled both temperature and humidity to a steady state, year-round. It was on a cul-de-sac. Beyond the yard was forest. It was a suitable home for a Boston Brahmin. Unfortunately, Miranda wasn't one. Her grandmother was. The breeding and culture were beaten out of her by an alcoholic mother, an unknown father, and a lifetime of drinking. It was a maintenance headache for her from day one. It took the services of 2 cleaning ladies twice a week to keep it clean. The house had to be clean for the cleaning ladies, but the kids couldn't really be kids in their own house. It was isolated. It was 10 miles out from town. It was the first house in the development, and the college people lied a lot in the brochures. The college ran the schools, so they seemed okay. The truth be told, it was still a Baptist Bible college in the middle of nowhere that expanded its curriculum to take advantage of GI Bill money. They needed diversity to make it look good, hence the ad and the brochures. The college was there because the Reverend Sterling got a bargain on the plantation buildings during the Great Depression. His dream was to produce preachers for his radical sect of the Baptist Church that used live venomous snakes in its religious services and spread his true faith Baptist church all over the world. It wasn't a sustainable business model. Hence the expansion after 40 years to a liberal arts college. The trap caught the Slackmeyer family. The kids found that they could escape their mother for days at a time by simply being quiet and moving about the house. It was a big place with many hiding places for children. The girls slept together at first because of habit. They had always slept together. Soon, space and petty differences sent them to different rooms. Ted slept as far away from the girls as he could because he didn't like to listen to them fight. They always fought over everything. Corinne was noisy, opinionated, stubborn, and messy. Deidre was sullen, withdrawn, moody, and obsessive about neatness. They only had each other for company. Ted lived in the library during almost every waking moment. He didn't interact with his sisters at all. They both beat on him both physically and verbally. His main motivation was to please people so as to not get beaten. He only felt safe when his dad was home. When they moved into the big house, the yard and grounds were a huge mud flat, strewn with construction debris. Nobody had even thought about landscaping. It was what Miranda needed to straighten out her life. She discovered gardening. She put her botany degree to work to make the grounds match the house. It was also the best thing that ever happened to her children. They got to play outside in the dirt. The mudroom had a shower and could be hosed clean. Their mother was occupied with the lawn and grounds and didn't pay as much attention to perfection in her children. The botany degree and her fascination with plants gave her a constructive outlet that she never had before. She stopped drinking except for a nightcap after a heavy day of outside work. She dragged all the construction debris into a hole she dug in the middle of the yard and set it on fire. After it burned, she filled in the hole. She raked the area smooth and brought in topsoil. She raked that out and planted grass seed, selecting grasses that matched the light conditions and the soil conditions as there were several limestone outcroppings on the grounds. She mixed white clover into the seed mix to provide nitrates to the grass. Then she started with shrubs, trees, and beds. She had an outlet for the boredom and loneliness of being a housewife. She also had a magnificent lawn and grounds. She joined the Congregational Church and became active in that too. It gave her a social outlet. It was still 10 miles to anything, though. Her husband bought her a Cadillac. The children grew. There were 2 television stations reachable by the antenna. There also was no cable service. The children learned to amuse themselves without TV. A satellite dish was discussed, but dismissed as just too much trouble for questionable entertainment value. Corinne dropped out of high school in 11th grade and ran away with a boy on a motorcycle. She never wrote and never visited. Only Ted knew of her whereabouts, and he was sworn to secrecy. Deidre got pregnant in 11th grade and ran off to Beale Street in Memphis with a saxophone player twice her age. She sent baby pictures, but little else. Ted graduated from high school and went to Vanderbilt to study engineering. He came home to visit occasionally, but never moved back home. Miranda took a job as a financial planner at the local insurance agency and gardened. She had her perfect house and perfect garden. Her only visitors were her husband and people from the church. The years went by. The anniversary party was set up in the big parlor and adjoining dining room. A buffet of hors d'oeuvres was set up in front of the fireplace in the dining room, and small tables were scattered around set up for 4 or 5 people each. Each table had fresh flowers on it. 2 music students from the college, one on the piano and one on violin, provided the music. No expense was spared on the decor. Miranda was celebrating her perfect family. She assumed that because of the significance of the occasion, Corinne and Deidre would come, even though she hadn't heard from Corinne for years and communication with Deidre was directed by Deidre's husband, because he felt that family mattered. Deidre never talked about her childhood with him. Deidre never visited home. Deidre never voluntarily called. Deidre didn't RSVP when she got the invitation. Deidre didn't tell her husband about it either. Except for the usual pre-party disasters involving food and punctuality, things went smoothly. Miranda was still nervous. They never had any sort of big shindig together. She had no idea as to how her husband would behave at this one. They eloped when they got married. They never really socialized together. She had no real idea as how he behaved in large groups. She started a second 2-liter. She had shared some of the first with the caterer, but had drunk a reasonable amount herself. By 4 o'clock, when guests started arriving early, she was in her zone. Her husband, who was due in at 10, still hadn't arrived. He had called from Winnipeg the day before and assured her he would be there. She gathered, arranged and placed flowers, checked place settings, and bustled around. But inside, the insecure little girl that couldn't do anything right was scared shitless. She fortified her courage with more Cuba Libre and worried. She entertained the early arrivals, made small talk, and made them comfortable. She made a dash for the bathroom off the kitchen and vomited. It was streaked with blood. She had forgotten to eat again. She ate some saltines and some cheese and brushed her teeth and rinsed. Her mouth still tasted like regurgitated rum. Her stomach hurt. She ate some more saltines and some pretzels and went back out to the guests. Her legs felt rubbery as she walked to the living room. More guests came. She bustled around, made people comfortable, and made introductions here and there. It was 6 o'clock. Her husband was still a no-show. She was starting to feel angry and abandoned. She was celebrating 25 years of being married to a ghost. He was never there. She needed him now, not just to trot out to show to the guests, but to hold her and tell her it's all okay. She needed a hug and a pat on the ass. She needed kind words from the father of her children, her lover, and her spouse. At 7:30, he arrived carrying his 2-suiter and his carry-on. He had a 2-day growth of beard and smelled like a locker room. His clothes were rumpled from time spent sitting on airplane seats. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He was definitely not ready for a big party in their honor. He was home. She almost knocked him off his feet when she wrapped her arms around him. Her dark depression immediately changed to joy. He hugged her back and kissed her. Happy anniversary, Miranda. Where the hell were you? They canceled the flight from Chicago to Nashville. I ended up flying into Anniston and renting a car. The rental agency didn't have one ready to go, so I had to wait for a car from Huntsville. It was a mess. Then I hit construction on 65. You said you would be here this morning. The flight from Winnipeg was delayed. We have over 100 people here to celebrate our anniversary, and you are very late and you are never here when I need you. I'm sorry, dear. I got here when I could. Don't you? I'm sorry, dear me. I've been planning this shindig for months, and you don't care enough to show up on time. We've been married for 25 fucking years, and most of my friends have never seen you. Her voice got louder. You left me here in this god-forsaken mausoleum in the middle of nowhere with three bratty, ungrateful kids, two of which didn't care enough to answer my invitation to come today. You missed Ted. He was here, but left. I'm here with all these fucking people, trying to explain the lack of family at a 25th anniversary party. How do you think it fucking looks? I've been a single mother for 20 years. I raised those fucking bastards all by myself. Two of them didn't stick around to finish high school. All the work, sweat, and worry for what? I'll tell you what. A half-hour visit from a preoccupied college student who came, ate, and screwed, and a husband that didn't care enough to show up on time. A husband that is a ghost at best. Everyone here has at one time or another thought I was a loose woman and had three illegitimate children because they never saw any evidence besides the ring that I was even married. You come here now again to fuck me, and then you go traipsing off to God only knows where to do God only knows what. To you, I'm just another whore you fuck to keep your prostate clear. You drop me into this mausoleum to give the appearance that you care, but when I need you, I can't even call you on the phone. You call me when you goddamn feel like it and talk for a few minutes and then hang up. I needed you and you weren't there. You were never there. She started to cry. Calm down, honey, I'm here now. I'm sorry. I've done the best I could. You miserable bastard. You think showering me with presents and stuffing me into a big house is loving me. It's not. It's just more dusting and sweeping. I have to hire people to stay on top of it. I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere in a town that serves a snake handler seminary. I have to go to Nashville to get my hair done right. My nail polish is mail order because nobody down here stocks my brand. I can't even watch a Red Sox game. There's no culture here. I hate it. I hate you. I would rather die than live here with you for another minute. I don't want to be here. You can't mean that. Can you? I mean it. I mean every word. Can't do this anymore. It feels like I'm living a lie. I don't have a husband. I don't have a family. Nobody loves me. I want to die. Hey, kid, I've loved you ever since I first laid eyes on you. You are the beacon that lights my way through the world. It's you I think about in the lonely hotel rooms every day I'm away. I'm so sorry that you feel bad. Soon I am going to retire, and I will take you to all the places I went so I can share them with you. I need you as much as you need me, but I have to work. I'm committed. It hurts me to be gone so much. You're just saying that because you don't want to look for someone else to fuck when you are between calls. You probably have whores or even wives all over the world. I know how that works. Who are you fucking when you are not here? What does she look like? With that last question, she ran upstairs and slammed the bedroom door. The guests scattered like midnight New York City cockroaches when the light is turned on. Suddenly, the house was empty except for the Slackmeyers, the catering crew, and the two college students. The scene still echoed as Ben, aka Mom, aka Thelma, carried the bags into the big house. Now she was gone, and rum was involved, shredded with a sailor in a freak train wreck right before Christmas. Her heart was heavy from the memory. He had spent the whole time he was home that time sleeping on the couch. He tried over and over to forgive her for the outburst, but she was cold and angry toward him. It was almost a year before she would be cordial toward him. They never made love again. The relationship was broken. Thelma sat on the couch and cried for the loss. Charlene could only watch. There was nothing she could do.